Hello, this is Matt Singer. I'm the Arts and Culture Editor at Willamette Week, and today I'm speaking with Dr. Andy Barnett. He is the Medical Director for the Respiratory Clinic at OHSU and a co-founder of the business Back to Work Experts. And Andy, maybe you can just kind of start by giving us a synopsis of what exactly Back to Work Experts is and what you are aiming to do.
Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about it. A number of colleagues in emergency medicine, preventative health, infectious diseases, and myself got together early on in the pandemic to support business owners in the Portland, Oregon, and New York City area to get their businesses reopened safely, considering all the risks of bringing people back into the workplace as it relates to transmission of COVID-19.
So what exactly do you offer businesses then? Is it just sort of like, are you consulting? Are you actively like, connecting them with, other businesses that can like provide them with say HVAC systems and that kind of stuff? What exactly does the business do for these businesses?
We either will come into a business and provide them with a comprehensive operations plan that's designed to limit the likelihood of COVID transmission in their workplace. Or for those businesses, as we move a little later in this pandemic, who have already developed their own plans, we're happy to come in and look over the plans that they've generated. People have put a tremendous amount of time and effort into this. They've done a lot of research and put a lot of resources into it. And most folks have done a really commendable job. And in those cases, we can come in, go over the plans with them, make some minor modifications or point out some things that we've learned from working with experts in the other trades. HVAC is a great example. There's a lot to be done in most places to improve the safety and reduce the likelihood of COVID transmission. We like to talk about an approach that is known in infection prevention as the Swiss cheese model. The idea here is that if getting COVID transmitted from one person to another is like falling through a hole in the Swiss cheese, we try to stack as many slices of cheese as possible with holes in different places. We know that there's no single thing that can entirely prevent COVID transmission. But the more layers of cheese we can implement there, the less likely it is that something's going to fall all the way through, even if each one of those layers has its imperfections. This is also known a little more technically as the hierarchy of controls, and it's an effort to implement multiple layers of control in COVID transmission. And if businesses are able to do that and put in a lot of layers, we feel that they can adequately ensure the safety of their staff and their patrons.
Who have you worked with in the Portland area?
Thus far in the Portland area, we've had great success. Our initial client, a lot of people know, was Daniel Shoemaker at Teardrop Lounge. Daniel put a tremendous amount of effort in early on, realized that there were some areas where he could use a little bit of additional expertise. So we came in and worked comprehensively with him on an entire operations plan. Specifically, we spent a lot of time with his HVAC team, consulted directly with the HVAC engineers, and we were able to make some modifications both to the space physically. I don't know if you've been, but really a smart design of some plexiglass barriers there. Modifications to the HVAC system, to their check-in process, a really holistic approach, implemented many layers in the hierarchy of controls. And we think that that's been a great success. Daniel and his staff have been really happy with it. Patrons have been really very satisfied as well and feel that COVID safety is a very high priority there. Since that time, we've had the opportunity to work with a number of others. The team at Gato Gato was really interested in having us work with them later on in their process. And both they and we felt that that was really beneficial. The team at Campania up in North Portland, and a number of others that we are in the process of consulting with right now and have not completed projects.
Is there anything you feel like the state or that government or that Governor Brown should be doing to help with this process that they're not already doing? Like I'm wondering if like a business like Back to Work Experts should actually really have to exist. Like shouldn't there be maybe a government facility that helps businesses reopen and meet these safety guidelines to the maximum of their ability? What's your feeling on that?
I'm not sure that it's the government's responsibility to advise private businesses in all scenarios. I think that the government is doing the best job that they can with the information that they have to set rules and regulations, and then to a greater or lesser extent, expect businesses to find a way to be in compliance with that. And that's very much what we've set out to do at Back to Work Experts, recognizing that these guidelines and recommendations are complicated and they are typically outside of the core skill set of a business owner. Restaurateurs have not been asked to be experts in virology or HVAC management or infection prevention beyond basic sanitation in the past. And it's a big lift to ask them to suddenly have this really deep layer of understanding. So we want to come in and support them in that way.
Is there Does it change when you're talking about, kind of like COVID proofing an office, like like say like a lawyer, like a office building downtown,
Right.
something like that, as opposed to, is there a different set of challenges there?
Generally speaking, it's a lot easier for us to help develop a safe operations plan for a facility which has a set number of employees who come and go, as opposed to one in which the majority of people coming and going in a bar or restaurant, for example, are patrons who don't necessarily have a contract with the business owner to behave in a certain way or to follow a certain set of rules. So of course the business owner can enforce rules, but nobody wants to have to do that, especially when you're trying to entertain your patrons and your guests. So it's a far more challenging problem to solve for in a business to consumer space like a bar or restaurant where you have 100 people coming and going in a night, and you have to set up processes that are essentially fail safe, as opposed to an office building where you can sit down, you can train people in a certain way, you can contract with them for a certain set of actions. A much less complicated problem to solve for in the office space.
So, this might not be like your area of expertise, but I'm wondering, if it seems like you can make a place as safe as possible, but that the psychological hurdle for people of going out and, I think people have gotten used to the idea of going out and eating outside, or having a drink outside, but going inside of a business or a restaurant is a completely different hurdle for people. What's your sense of, working with businesses so far? Like, how are business owners sort of uh, managing that aspect of this, of the just like the psychological barrier to people coming out and actually going inside of a building to eat? I mean, is that something that, is there anything that businesses can do to help bring in people, or is it just sort of, we have to wait for the culture to get to this point where they will feel safe doing that?
No, I don't think it's a purely psychological effort. I think real steps need to be taken to make indoor spaces safe in a way that's a lot easier to do in the outdoor space. The rates of COVID transmission, the number of cases of confirmed verified COVID transmission in outdoor settings is incredibly small worldwide. Almost all COVID transmission happens indoors. So getting people to feel safe indoors is about implementing processes that ensure their safety and also taking an extra step to make sure that those processes are visible to people. We may reach a point where the trust level starts to go up and people know that a lot is happening that they can't see. But right now, in order for people to feel safe, they have to see what's happening and understand how that is helping to keep them safe from COVID. And I mean, that's exactly what we are here to do, is to help businesses figure out what those steps are. We spend a lot of time talking to them about the steps that they're taking that could happen in the background. They should move them forward so that folks can see what's happening and understand why they are that much safer because of the steps that this business is taking. Unfortunately, some businesses are opening and not taking what we believe are adequate steps. And there's no way for the average consumer to know unless they can see it with their own eyes.
So are you seeing kind of uptick in people contacting you now that we're moving into the winter months?
Very, very much so. A lot of bars and restaurants actually reached out to us early on when they found out that we were working with groups like Teardrop here in Portland and some pretty big names in New York as well. We had the good fortune to work with the Jean George restaurant in Manhattan. And we got a lot of calls, but when people realized that they could continue outdoor service, there wasn't really as much demand for complicated plans. Now that the weather's taken a turn just in the last few weeks, we've seen a really rapid uptick in interest in our services, and we're really happy to be able to help.